Charming billionaire teases shy janitor saying, "I want a kiss from you today." The late afternoon sun painted golden streaks across the marble floors of the Mel Brock Hotel lobby as Ryan Walker pushed his cleaning cart toward the service elevator. His blue uniform was spotless despite 6 hours of work, his yellow gloves tucked neatly into his belt. The hotel was winding down from the lunch rush, and he had exactly 43 minutes before his next assignment on the 14th floor. He was thinking about his Harley, the 1987 blue Davidson that waited for him in the employee parking lot like a faithful friend. Tonight, after his shift, he planned to adjust the carburetor. The engine had been running rough lately, sputtering when he accelerated from a standstill. Nothing major, just the kind of maintenance that kept his 28-year-old hands busy and his mind quiet. Ryan had learned early that a quiet mind was a survivable mind. "Excuse me." The voice was silk over steel, the kind of voice that made men turn their heads and forget their names. Ryan looked up from his cart and found himself staring into the bluest eyes he had ever seen, or rather, the bluest eyes he had seen in 12 years. Celeste Davenport stood 3 feet away, her blonde hair catching the light like spun gold, her royal blue blazer perfectly tailored to her frame. She wore denim shorts that would have seemed casual on anyone else but somehow looked elegant on her, and her blue heels clicked softly against the marble as she took a step closer. "Yes, ma'am?" Ryan kept his voice neutral, professional. He had worked at the Mel Brock for 8 months now, and in that time, he had seen Ms. Davenport perhaps a dozen times, always from a distance, always moving through the hotel like a beautiful storm, quick, powerful, untouchable. "I need to speak with you." She tilted her head slightly, and something in that gesture made Ryan's chest tighten. "Privately, I'm on shift, ma'am. If there's a problem with the cleaning, I can—" "There's no problem with the cleaning." She smiled, and it was the kind of smile that made Ryan acutely aware of how close she was standing. "You're very thorough. I've noticed." The words hung in the air between them like a challenge. "I have a conference room on the 3rd floor," she continued. "Follow me." It wasn't a request. Ryan glanced at his cart, then at the elevator, calculating whether he could afford to be late to the 14th floor. But Celeste was already walking away, her heels clicking a steady rhythm that somehow sounded like follow, follow, follow. He followed. The conference room was small, designed for intimate meetings rather than large gatherings. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, and the late afternoon light filled the space with an amber glow. Celeste closed the door behind them, and suddenly the room felt much smaller than it had any right to be. "You're Ryan Walker," she said, leaning against the conference table. 28 years old. You've been working here for 8 months. Before that, you were at the Riverside Inn for 2 years. Before that, a string of odd jobs. Mechanic shops, construction sites, some delivery work. Ryan felt his jaw tighten. "You ran a background check on me?" "I run background checks on everyone." She crossed her arms, and the movement made her blazer shift in a way that drew Ryan's attention to the elegant line of her collarbone. "But you're different. You're the only employee who's never asked me for anything. Not a raise, not a favor, not even eye contact. I'm just here to work, ma'am." "Celeste." She pushed off the table and walked toward him, closing the distance between them with 3 measured steps. "When we're alone, you can call me Celeste." Ryan forced himself to hold her gaze. "Is there something you need, Ms. Davenport?" "Actually, yes." She reached up and loosened the top button of her blazer, a casual gesture that somehow felt deliberate. "I need to ask you something, and I need you to answer honestly." "Okay. Do you find me attractive?" The question hit Ryan like a physical blow. He took a step back, nearly stumbling into his cleaning cart. That's not appropriate. It's a simple question." Celeste's voice was soft now, almost gentle. "Yes or no? You're my boss. I'm not asking as your boss." She moved closer again, and Ryan could smell her perfume, something expensive and subtle like jasmine and rain. "I'm asking as a woman who's tired of playing games." Ryan's mind was racing. Every instinct screamed at him to leave, to protect himself, to remember that people like Celeste Davenport lived in a different world, a world where people like him were disposable. But there was something in her eyes, something vulnerable and real, that didn't match the confident words. "Yes," he said quietly, "you're beautiful. Anyone with eyes can see that. But you've never looked." "I've looked." Ryan met her gaze, and for the first time since entering the room, he let himself be honest. "I've just been very careful about it." Celeste smiled, and this time it was different. Warmer, more genuine. "Why careful?" "Because I like this job. Because I need this job." He gestured at his uniform, at the yellow gloves on his belt. "Because I know my place. Your place." She repeated the words, as if they left a bad taste in her mouth. What if I told you I don't care about places? About titles or uniforms or the difference between a CEO and a janitor? Then I'd say you're lying. The words came out harsher than Ryan intended, but he didn't take them back. People always care about the difference. For a long moment, Celeste just looked at him. Then she did something that made Ryan's world tilt on its axis. She reached up and touched his face, her fingers cool against his cheek. "I want a kiss from you today," she whispered. Ryan froze. The words seemed to echo in the quiet room, bouncing off the windows and the walls and the professional distance that was supposed to protect him from exactly this kind of situation. "Ms. Davenport, Celeste, this isn't." He struggled to find words that didn't make him sound like a coward or a fool. "This isn't a good idea. I didn't ask if it was a good idea." Her thumb brushed against his jaw, and Ryan felt his resolve cracking like ice under pressure. "I said I want a kiss from you today." "Why?" The question burst out of him raw and honest. "Why me? You could have anyone. Anyone in the world. Why would you want?" He trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. "Why would I want the janitor?" Celeste finished for him. Her voice was soft, but there was an edge to it. "Is that what you were going to say?" "I didn't mean—" "Yes, you did." She dropped her hand from his face and Ryan immediately missed the warmth. "And you're right to ask. I'll tell you why, Ryan Walker. I'll tell you exactly why I want a kiss from you." She walked to the window, her back to him now, silhouetted against the dying light. "I'm 24 years old," she said. "I inherited this hotel when I was 22. I didn't earn it. I didn't build it. My father died and suddenly I was the CEO of a multi-million-dollar business. Do you know what that's like? To wake up one day and have everyone expect you to be something you're not ready to be?" Ryan said nothing. He knew enough to recognize a rhetorical question when he heard one. "Since then, I've been surrounded by people who want things from me. Money, connections, approval. I can't walk into a room without someone calculating what I'm worth to them." She turned back to face him, and in the golden light, Ryan could see the exhaustion in her eyes. "But you? You look at me like I'm just a person. Not a paycheck, not a stepping stone, just a person." "You are a person," Ryan said quietly. "Am I?" She laughed, but it was a sad sound. "Sometimes I'm not sure. Sometimes I think I'm just a collection of other people's expectations wearing a royal blue blazer." Ryan didn't know what to say to that. He wasn't good with words, never had been. He was better with his hands, with engines and tools and things that made sense. But standing in that conference room, watching Celeste Davenport strip away her armor piece by piece, he found himself wanting to say something meaningful. "I lost my parents when I was 16, he said finally. "House fire. I wasn't home that night. I was staying at a friend's place. By the time I got back, there was nothing left but ashes and police tape." Celeste's expression softened. "I'm sorry. Don't be. It was a long time ago." Ryan shoved his hands into his pockets, a defensive gesture he'd never quite outgrown. "But I learned something from it. I learned that who you are isn't defined by what you have or what you've lost. It's defined by what you do with what's left." "And what was left for you?" "Nothing." Ryan smiled, but it was a hard smile. "No money, no house, no family. I spent 2 years bouncing between shelters and friends' couches. I worked construction jobs for cash. I slept in my car when I finally saved enough to buy one. And eventually, I bought a motorcycle, a beat-up old Harley that I fixed with my own hands. That bike taught me more about life than any parent or teacher ever could." What did it teach you?" "That broken things can be fixed if you're patient enough, if you're willing to put in the work." He pulled his hands from his pockets and looked at them, rough, calloused, stained with traces of engine grease that never quite washed away. "These hands have rebuilt that bike 3 times. They've changed oil and replaced gaskets and balanced tires, and every time I ride it I know that I created something. I took something broken and made it whole." Celeste walked back toward him, and this time when she stopped, she was close enough that Ryan could feel the warmth radiating from her skin. "So you think I'm broken?" she asked. "I think you're lonely," Ryan said, "and I think you're tired of pretending you're not." The words landed between them like a confession. Celeste's eyes widened slightly, and for a moment, Ryan thought he'd gone too far. But then she smiled, really smiled, and it transformed her face from beautiful to breathtaking. "You're right," she said. "I am lonely. I live in a mansion by myself. I eat dinner alone every night. I wake up alone every morning. And the worst part? Everyone thinks I have everything I could possibly want. Do you?" "No." The word was barely a whisper. "I want something I can't buy, something I can't inherit, something that can't be taken away by lawyers or accountants or board members. What's that? Someone who sees me. She reached up and touched his face again, and this time Ryan didn't pull away. Someone who looks at me and doesn't see dollar signs or opportunities. Someone who looks at me and just sees me. Ryan's heart was hammering in his chest. He knew he should step back, should maintain the professional distance that had kept him safe for 8 months, but Celeste's hand was warm against his skin, and her eyes were so blue, so impossibly blue, and he was so tired of being careful. I see you, he said, then kiss me. It wasn't a request anymore. It was a plea. Ryan hesitated for one more second, his mind cataloging all the reasons this was a terrible idea. The power dynamic, the professional consequences, the inevitable heartbreak when reality reasserted itself and reminded him that CEOs and janitors didn't end up together outside of fairy tales. But then Celeste leaned forward just slightly, and suddenly none of those reasons mattered anymore. He kissed her. It was gentle at first, tentative, exploratory, the kind of kiss shared by two people who aren't quite sure what they're doing but can't help doing it anyway. Celeste's lips were soft, and she tasted like mint and something sweeter that Ryan couldn't identify. Her hand moved from his cheek to the back of his neck, pulling him closer, and Ryan felt something inside him break open, some wall he'd built to protect himself from exactly this kind of vulnerability. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were breathing hard. That was, Celeste started, then stopped, seeming at a loss for words. Yeah, Ryan agreed. It was. They stood there in the golden light, neither of them moving, neither of them speaking. Outside the window, the city was beginning to light up as evening approached. Inside the conference room, two people who had no business being together tried to figure out what came next. I should get back to work, Ryan said finally. I'm late for the 14th floor. Right. Celeste took a step back, and Ryan immediately felt the absence of her warmth. Of course, I didn't mean to. I shouldn't have. Don't. Ryan cut her off gently. Don't apologize. I wanted that too. Did you? She looked at him with those impossibly blue eyes, and Ryan saw hope and fear warring in equal measure. Yes. The honesty felt dangerous, but he gave it to her anyway. I've wanted it since the first time I saw you walking through the lobby 8 months ago. I just never thought that it could happen, that you'd want it to happen. Celeste laughed, and this time it was a real laugh, full and unguarded. Ryan Walker, you have no idea how wrong you are. Before he could respond, she reached up and pulled something from around her neck, a delicate silver chain with a small medallion attached. She held it out to him, and Ryan felt his entire world stop spinning. He knew that medallion. He had seen it before, 12 years ago, when he was 16 years old and sleeping on beaches because he had nowhere else to go. Where did you get that? His voice came out rough, choked. A boy gave it to me, Celeste said softly. A long time ago. When I was 12 and he was 16 and we were both just lost. Ryan couldn't breathe. The memories were flooding back now, unstoppable and overwhelming. A girl with blonde hair and blue eyes sitting on a beach at sunset. A girl who had been so sad, so impossibly sad, and he had given her the only thing he owned. A silver medallion his mother had given him before she died. You, he whispered. It was you. It was me. Celeste's eyes were shining with tears. I never forgot you, Ryan. I looked for you for years. I searched shelters and asked about you everywhere. But you disappeared and I thought I'd never see you again. And then 8 months ago, you walked into my hotel pushing a cleaning cart. And why didn't you say anything? Ryan felt his own eyes burning. Why didn't you tell me who you were? Because I didn't know if you remembered. Because I was afraid that if you did remember, you'd remember a sad little rich girl who cried about her parents' divorce and you'd think, I don't know what I thought you'd think. She wiped at her eyes impatiently. I just knew I couldn't risk losing you again. Not until I knew if you felt something too. I felt something. Ryan's voice was hoarse. I felt it the moment I saw you. I just didn't understand what it was. And now I understand everything. He reached out and took the medallion from her hand, turning it over. On the back, barely visible, were 2 initials he'd scratched with a pocket knife. R.W. and C.D. You kept this, all these years. I never took it off. Celeste placed her hand over his, and together they held the small piece of silver that had connected them across 12 years and 2 very different lives. It reminded me that someone once saw me when I was at my lowest. Someone gave me something precious when he had nothing. Someone made me believe that kindness still existed in the world. You gave me something too, Ryan said. You gave me a reason to keep going. After I gave you this, He paused, struggling with the words. I felt like I'd done something good, like maybe I mattered. like maybe the world wasn't just darkness and loss. They stood together in the fading light, two people separated by money and status and 12 years of life, united by a memory and a medallion and a kiss that tasted like second chances. So what happens now? Celeste asked. I don't know. Ryan was being honest again, unable to give her anything else. This is complicated, really complicated. I know. People will talk, they'll say terrible things. I know. I'm a janitor, Celeste. I push a cleaning cart and fix toilets and mop floors. I live in a studio apartment and ride a motorcycle that's older than some of my coworkers. I can't give you the life you're used to. I don't want the life I'm used to. She squeezed his hand. I want something real, something that doesn't feel like I'm drowning in emptiness every single day. And you think I can give you that? I think we can give that to each other. She smiled, and it was the most beautiful thing Ryan had ever seen, if we're brave enough to try. Before Ryan could respond, his radio crackled to life with a burst of static. Walker, you copy? You're 15 minutes late to the 14th floor. Mr. Martinez is looking for you. Reality crashed back in like a wave. Ryan grabbed his radio and pressed the talk button. Copy that. I'm on my way. Sorry for the delay. He looked at Celeste, and in her eyes he saw all the questions that neither of them could answer yet. How would this work? What would people say? Could someone like him really be with someone like her? But beneath those questions was something simpler and more powerful. Possibility. I have to go, he said. I know. She released his hand, but not before giving it one final squeeze. But Ryan, this conversation isn't over. No, he agreed. It's not. He walked to the door, then paused with his hand on the handle. Celeste? Yes? Thank you for remembering, for keeping the medallion, for... He struggled to find words big enough for what he felt. For seeing me. Thank you for the same, she said softly. Ryan left the conference room and went back to his cleaning cart, his heart pounding and his mind reeling. As he pushed the cart toward the elevator, he touched his lips unconsciously, remembering the taste of mint and possibility. On the 3rd floor, Celeste Davenport stood alone in the conference room, clutching a silver medallion and trying to remember how to breathe. Ryan's hands were still shaking when he reached the 14th floor. He'd been cleaning for 8 months, and in that time he'd developed a kind of meditation in the work. There was peace in scrubbing tiles and polishing mirrors and making things shine. But today, all he could think about was Celeste's lips against his, her hand on his neck, the way she'd looked at him when she'd shown him the medallion. Mr. Martinez, the floor supervisor, was waiting by the elevator with his arms crossed. He was a stocky man in his 50s with a permanent scowl, and the kind of mustache that suggested he'd stopped caring about fashion sometime in 1987. Walker, nice of you to join us. Sorry, sir, I don't care what you were doing. I care that you're late. Martinez gestured down the hallway. Room 1407 had a plumbing issue. Water everywhere. I need you to clean it up and then do the usual rounds. Yes, sir. Ryan pushed his cart down the hallway, trying to force his mind back into work mode, but it was impossible. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Celeste's face. Every time he took a breath, he remembered her perfume. And every time his radio crackled with another instruction, he wondered if she was somewhere in the hotel, thinking about him too. Room 1407 was a mess. Someone had apparently tried to fix a leaky faucet themselves and had succeeded only in flooding the bathroom. Ryan spent 45 minutes mopping up water, wringing out towels, and making sure the carpet hadn't been damaged. It was mindless work, which was usually what he preferred. But today his mind was anything but empty. He kept replaying the moment when Celeste had shown him the medallion, the way his world had suddenly realigned itself around that one small piece of silver. The realization that the woman he'd been carefully avoiding for 8 months was the same girl who had cried on his shoulder 12 years ago, while her parents screamed at each other in a mansion somewhere across town. He remembered that night so clearly now. He'd been sleeping rough on Crescent Beach, trying to stay warm under a stolen blanket and failing miserably. And then this girl had appeared. 12 years old, blonde, wearing clothes that probably cost more than Ryan would make in a year. She'd been crying so hard she could barely breathe, and something about her grief had cut through Ryan's own misery. He'd walked over to her, this strange, rich girl on a public beach at midnight, and he'd asked if she was okay. A stupid question. Obviously she wasn't okay. But sometimes the stupid questions were the only ones worth asking. She'd told him her parents were getting divorced, that her father was moving out, that her mother had locked herself in her bedroom and wouldn't come out, that Celeste had run away because she couldn't stand the silence of her big empty house anymore. Ryan had listened. He hadn't offered solutions or platitudes. He'd just listened. And when she'd finally stopped crying, he'd pulled out the medallion, The last thing his mother had given him before the fire, and he'd pressed it into her hand. "Keep it," he'd said, "so you remember that you're not alone, even when it feels like you are." She'd tried to give it back. She'd said it was too precious that he should keep it, but Ryan had insisted. He'd told her that knowing it was keeping someone else safe would make him feel less alone too. They'd sat on that beach for hours, two lost kids under a blanket of stars, sharing the kind of honesty that only comes in the middle of the night when everything else has been stripped away. And when the sun had started to rise, she'd hugged him, fierce and desperate, and then she'd run back toward her empty mansion. Ryan had never expected to see her again, but here she was 12 years later, wearing a royal blue blazer and asking for a kiss. "Walker!" Ryan jumped, nearly dropping his mop. Martinez was standing in the doorway of 1407, his scowl deeper than ever. "Are you planning to clean that floor or just stare at it?" "Sorry, sir. I was just thinking." "Well, stop thinking and start working. You've got 6 more rooms on this floor, and I need you done by 7. Ryan nodded and went back to mopping, but his mind refused to cooperate. All he could think about was what Celeste had said. "I want something real. Real." What did that even mean for people like them? She lived in a mansion. He lived in a studio apartment where the hot water only worked half the time. She ate at restaurants where a single meal cost more than his weekly paycheck. He ate ramen and whatever was on sale at the discount grocery store. And yet when he'd kissed her, none of that had mattered. In that moment, they'd just been 2 people who had found each other across an impossible distance. 2 people who remembered what it was like to be lost and alone and desperate for connection. Ryan finished the 14th floor at 6:47 p.m., 13 minutes ahead of schedule. He returned his cart to the supply closet, hung up his radio, and clocked out. The employee parking lot was half empty now, the evening shift just beginning as the day shift headed home. His Harley was waiting where he'd left it, gleaming blue under the parking lot lights. Ryan had washed it just yesterday, spending 2 hours with a bucket and a sponge making sure every inch of chrome sparkled. The bike was more than transportation to him. It was freedom. It was independence. It was proof that he could take something broken and make it beautiful. He was about to put on his helmet when he heard footsteps behind him. Ryan. He turned, and there she was. Celeste had changed out of her blazer and shorts into jeans and a simple white t-shirt, but she was no less stunning for the casual clothes. If anything, she looked more real, more human, without the CEO armor. "Hey," he said, suddenly unsure of what to say to the woman he'd kissed 3 hours ago. "I was hoping I'd catch you before you left." She stopped a few feet away, her hands in her pockets. "I wanted to, I don't know, I wanted to make sure you were okay." "I'm okay." Ryan set his helmet on the bike's seat. "Confused, but okay. Good. That makes 2 of us." She smiled, but it was tentative, uncertain. "I keep replaying everything in my head, wondering if I pushed too hard, if I scared you away." "You didn't scare me away." No. Ryan took a step closer to her, closing the distance between them. "You surprised me, shocked me, made me question everything I thought I understood about my life, but you didn't scare me." Celeste's shoulders relaxed slightly. "That's good. Because I meant what I said in that conference room. All of it." "So did I." They stood in the parking lot, 2 people trying to figure out how to navigate something that should have been simple, but felt impossibly complex. "Can I ask you something?" Celeste said. "Sure. Why didn't you recognize me? In 8 months of working here, you never once realized I was the girl from the beach?" Ryan had been asking himself the same question all afternoon. "Honestly, I think I didn't want to recognize you. You were this memory, this perfect moment when I'd done something good, and I didn't want to ruin it by seeing you as a real person with real problems. Does that make sense?" "Yeah." Celeste nodded slowly. "It does. I think maybe I did the same thing. I built you up in my head as this hero who saved me when I needed it most. And the idea of you was easier to hold on to than the reality of you. And now? Now I want the reality." She took a step closer and Ryan could smell her perfume again. Jasmine and rain. "I want to know who Ryan Walker is now, not who he was 12 years ago." "I'm not very interesting," Ryan warned. "I work 60 hours a week. I ride my motorcycle, I read books from the library. I watch old movies on my laptop. That's about it." "What kind of books?" "Classics mostly. Hemingway, Steinbeck, some Vonnegut." He shrugged. "I like stories about people who struggle. Makes me feel less alone." "What kind of movies?" "Westerns, film noir, anything in black and white." Ryan smiled. "I know it's weird. Most guys my age are watching superhero movies and playing video games." "It's not weird." Celeste reached out and took his hand, lacing their fingers together. It's you. And I want to know all of it. What you read, what you watch, what you think about when you're riding your motorcycle at 2 in the morning. How did you know I ride at 2 in the morning? Because I can't sleep either. She squeezed his hand. Some nights I stand at my bedroom window and watch the cars go by, and I wonder if any of them are you. Ryan felt something twist in his chest. Something that might have been hope or might have been fear. Probably both. Celeste, I need you to understand something. If we do this, whatever this is, it's going to be hard. People are going to judge you. They're going to say you're slumming it, that you're going through some kind of crisis, that you'll get bored and move on. Let them talk. And they're going to judge me even worse. They'll say I'm using you for your money, that I'm some kind of gold digger, that I'm not good enough for you. You're more than good enough for me. Celeste's voice was fierce now. Ryan, you gave me your mother's medallion when you had nothing else to give. You sat with me on a beach and listened to me cry about problems you would have killed to have. You made me feel like I mattered when my whole world was falling apart. How is that not good enough? That was 12 years ago. I'm different now. So am I. We're both different, but that doesn't change what I know about you. She reached up with her free hand and touched his face, the same way she had in the conference room. I know you're kind. I know you're thoughtful. I know you work hard and take pride in what you do, even when no one's watching. I know you read Hemingway and watch westerns and rebuild motorcycles with your own hands. And I know that when you kiss me, I feel more alive than I've felt in 12 years. Ryan wanted to argue. He wanted to list all the reasons this wouldn't work, all the ways they were too different, all the obstacles that stood between a CEO and a janitor. But when Celeste looked at him like that, like he was something precious and rare, all those reasons seemed to evaporate. One date, he said finally. Let me take you on one real date. Not in a conference room, not at the hotel. Somewhere normal, where we can just be two people getting to know each other. Okay. Celeste's smile could have lit up the entire parking lot. When? Tomorrow night? I'm off at 6. Tomorrow night is perfect. She stood on her tiptoes and kissed his cheek, a gentle brush of lips that somehow felt more intimate than their kiss in the conference room. Pick me up at 7? I don't know where you live. 1247 Lakeshore Drive. The big white mansion with the iron gates, you can't miss it. Ryan laughed despite himself. Of course you live in the big white mansion with iron gates. Don't judge me. I inherited it, remember? But she was smiling too. And for the first time since this whole impossible situation had started, Ryan felt like maybe, just maybe, they could make this work. I'll see you tomorrow, he said. Tomorrow. She squeezed his hand one last time, then released it and stepped back. Drive safe, Ryan Walker. You too, Celeste Davenport. He watched her walk to her car, a sleek silver Mercedes that probably cost more than he'd make in 5 years, and tried to process the fact that tomorrow night he would be picking up the CEO of the Melbrook Hotel for a date, on his Harley, because he didn't own a car. This was either going to be the best decision of his life or the biggest mistake he'd ever made, possibly both. Ryan put on his helmet, started the Harley, and rode home through the city streets. The evening air was cool against his skin, and the familiar rumble of the engine helped settle his racing thoughts. He'd learned to find peace in the rhythm of the road, in the way the bike responded to his every movement, in the simple act of going forward. Tomorrow he'd be taking Celeste somewhere. He hadn't figured out where yet, but it needed to be perfect. Somewhere she wouldn't normally go. Somewhere that would show her who he really was, not who she might imagine him to be. His studio apartment was on the 3rd floor of a building that had seen better days. The elevator was broken again, so Ryan climbed the stairs, his legs protesting after 10 hours on his feet. Inside, the apartment was small but clean. Just a single room with a kitchenette, a bathroom barely big enough to turn around in, and a futon that served as both couch and bed. But it was his. He'd earned it with his own money, and nobody could take it away from him. Ryan microwaved a cup of ramen and sat on his futon, pulling out the paperback copy of The Sun Also Rises that he'd been reading, but the words blurred together on the page, meaningless, because all he could think about was tomorrow. All he could think about was Celeste. At 11:47 p.m., he gave up on reading and went to bed, but sleep wouldn't come. He lay in the darkness listening to the sounds of the city filtering through his window, car horns, distant sirens, the low murmur of voices from the apartment next door, and he thought about a girl on a beach crying under the stars, and a woman in a conference room asking for a kiss. And tomorrow night, when somehow, impossibly, those two people would become one. Hello, my friend. How was your day today? Is everything okay? I hope you're finding peace in these stories we share together. Speaking of which, I want to take a moment to send you all my warmest wishes. Merry Christmas to everyone reading this, and may God protect each of you and your families during this beautiful season. This is a special wish from me, the creator of this channel, to all of you wonderful people who take the time to listen to these stories. May your hearts be filled with joy, love, and hope, just like the characters in our tales. Now let's continue with Ryan's journey. The next morning, Ryan woke up at 5 a.m. out of habit, even though he wasn't scheduled to work until noon. He lay in bed for a few minutes, staring at the ceiling and trying to convince himself that yesterday had really happened, that Celeste Davenport had really asked him for a kiss, that she'd really kept his mother's medallion for 12 years, that tonight he was really taking her on a date. It seemed impossible, like a dream that would dissolve in the morning light, but his lips still tingled with the memory of her kiss, and that was real enough. Ryan got up, showered in lukewarm water, the hot water heater was being temperamental again, and made himself breakfast. Scrambled eggs and toast, nothing fancy. He ate standing at his kitchenette counter, watching the sunrise through his window, and trying to plan tonight's date. Dinner was the obvious choice, but where? He couldn't take her to some fancy restaurant where the waiters would look down on him and make her uncomfortable. But he also couldn't take her to the diner where he usually ate, where the food was good, but the ambiance was non-existent. Then he remembered a place his friend Marcus had mentioned, a little Italian restaurant called Giuseppe's on the east side of town, family-run, cash only, with red checkered tablecloths and candles stuck in wine bottles. The kind of place where nobody cared who you were or how much money you made, as long as you were hungry. Perfect. Ryan called ahead and made a reservation for 2 at 7:30. The woman who answered the phone had a thick Italian accent and called him sweetheart. He felt better already. Work was torture. Every minute felt like an hour. Ryan cleaned rooms and scrubbed floors and emptied trash cans, all while his mind was somewhere else entirely. He kept expecting to see Celeste walking through the hotel, but she never appeared. Maybe she was in meetings. Maybe she was regretting yesterday. Maybe she'd come to her senses and realized that this was a terrible idea. At 3 p.m., his phone buzzed with a text message. Unknown number. Still on for tonight? Still on. See, Ryan's hands were shaking as he typed his response. Ryan. Yes. Giuseppe's Italian restaurant, 7:30. Casual dress. I'll pick you up at 7. See, I'll be ready. Can't wait. Ryan stared at those 3 words. Can't wait. And felt something warm unfold in his chest. She was real. This was real. He finished his shift at 6, went home, and spent 30 minutes trying to figure out what to wear. He didn't own many nice clothes. Most of his wardrobe consisted of work uniforms and jeans and t-shirts. Finally, he settled on dark jeans, a button-down shirt in navy blue, and his only pair of shoes that weren't work boots or sneakers. He looked at himself in the bathroom mirror and tried to see what Celeste saw. A 28-year-old man with rough hands and tired eyes. A man who worked with his hands and read Hemingway and rebuilt motorcycles in his spare time. A man who was about to pick up a billionaire on a motorcycle that had 80,000 miles on it and a tendency to backfire. You're insane, he told his reflection. His reflection didn't disagree. At 6:45, Ryan started the Harley and rode toward Lakeshore Drive. The evening was beautiful, warm, but not hot, with a slight breeze that smelled like cut grass and possibility. The bike purred beneath him, running smoothly for once as if it knew how important tonight was. 12:47. Lakeshore Drive was exactly what Celeste had described. A massive white mansion with iron gates and perfectly manicured lawns. Ryan pulled up to the intercom and pressed the button, suddenly acutely aware of how out of place his motorcycle looked against the backdrop of old money and inherited wealth. Hello? Celeste's voice crackled through the speaker. It's me, Ryan. I'll be right out. The gates swung open and Ryan drove up the circular driveway, parking his Harley next to a fountain that probably cost more than his entire year's salary. He took off his helmet and tried to smooth down his hair, which had been flattened by the helmet into an unflattering shape. The front door opened and Celeste stepped out. Ryan forgot how to breathe. She was wearing a simple sundress, yellow, with thin straps and a hemline that hit just above her knees. Her blonde hair was loose around her shoulders and she'd traded her usual heels for white sandals. She looked young and happy, and achingly beautiful. Hi, she said, walking toward him with a smile that made Ryan's heart stumble. Hi. He managed to find his voice. You look. Wow. Thanks. She did a little spin and the dress flared out around her legs. Too much? I wasn't sure what to wear for a motorcycle ride. It's perfect. Ryan held out the spare helmet he'd brought. Have you ever been on a bike before? Once, when I was 15. My dad took me for a ride on his Harley before he... She trailed off and Ryan saw the shadow cross her face. Before he what? Before he left. Before the divorce was final and he moved to New York and I became just another phone call he meant to make, but never did. She took the helmet from Ryan's hands. But that's ancient history. Tonight is about now. Ryan wanted to ask more. Wanted to know about her father, about the divorce, about the years between that night on the beach and this moment in her driveway. But he could see that she didn't want to talk about it, so he let it go. Okay, he said. Ground rules for riding. Hold on tight. Lean with me on turns. Don't put your feet down at stops. And trust me, I trust you. She put on the helmet, fumbling with the strap until Ryan reached over to help her. His fingers brushed against her neck, and he felt her shiver. You'll get used to it, he said. The vibration of the engine, the wind, the feeling of flying. She smiled. I like the sound of that. Ryan got on the bike and waited while Celeste climbed on behind him. Her arms wrapped around his waist, and suddenly the evening was perfect. The warm air, the purring engine. The woman holding on to him like he was something worth holding on to. He started the bike and they rode out through the iron gates, leaving the mansion behind. The ride to Giuseppe's took 20 minutes, and by the time they arrived, Celeste was laughing. A pure, joyful sound that Ryan had never heard from her before. She climbed off the bike with her hair windswept and her cheeks flushed, looking more alive than she had in her CEO blazer. That was incredible, she said, pulling off the helmet. Why don't I do that every day? Because you have a Mercedes. Ryan parked the bike and helped her fix her hair, which had gotten tangled in the wind. The Mercedes is boring. That, she gestured at the Harley. That was magic. A Giuseppe's was exactly what Ryan had hoped for. Warm and welcoming, with checkered tablecloths and the smell of garlic and tomatoes filling the air. The hostess, a woman in her 60s with kind eyes, showed them to a table in the corner, away from the other diners. Can I get you started with some wine? She asked. Ryan glanced at Celeste. Do you drink wine? Sometimes, but only if you do. I'll have a beer, Ryan said. Whatever's on tap. Make that too, Celeste added. The hostess smiled and disappeared, leaving them alone with menus and each other. This place is perfect, Celeste said, looking around at the intimate space. How did you find it? A friend recommended it. I've never actually been here before. Ryan opened his menu and immediately felt overwhelmed by the number of choices. I'm not very good at fancy restaurants. This isn't fancy. This is real. She reached across the table and took his hand. Thank you for bringing me here. They ordered. Chicken parmesan for him, carbonara for her, and settled into the kind of conversation that should have been awkward, but somehow wasn't. They talked about books. She loved Jane Austen. He preferred Hemingway. They talked about movies. She'd never seen Casablanca. He'd never seen The Notebook. They talked about everything and nothing, filling in the gaps of 12 years with words and laughter and comfortable silences. Can I ask you something personal? Celeste said, when their food arrived. Sure. What happened after that night on the beach? After you gave me the medallion? Ryan set down his fork and thought about how to answer. I kept sleeping rough for a few more months. Bounced between shelters. Tried to save money from odd jobs. Eventually, I met a guy named Marcus who ran a motorcycle repair shop. He took me on as an apprentice. Taught me everything he knew. I slept in the back of his shop for almost a year. He sounds like a good man. He was. He died 2 years ago. Heart attack. Ryan took a sip of his beer. He left me his tools in his will. They're the most valuable things I own. I'm sorry. Don't be. He gave me a skill. He gave me purpose. He showed me that I could be more than just some homeless kid. Ryan smiled. I think about him every time I work on my bike. Every time I fix something broken and make it work again. Celeste squeezed his hand. He'd be proud of you. Maybe. I hope so. Ryan paused. What about you? What happened after that night? My parents divorced. My dad moved to New York. My mom started drinking too much and dating men who didn't care about anything except her bank account. Celeste's voice was matter of fact, but Ryan could hear the pain beneath it. I went to boarding school when I was 14, graduated early, came back to take over the hotel when my dad died, and left it to me instead of my mom. Why did he leave it to you? I think he felt guilty, like giving me a multi-million-dollar hotel would make up for not being there when I needed him. She laughed, but it was a bitter sound. It didn't. Money doesn't fix everything, no matter what people think. No, Ryan agreed. It doesn't. They finished their meal, and when the check came, Ryan insisted on paying despite Celeste's protests. It took most of his cash for the week, but he didn't care. This was important. This was him showing her that he could take care of her, even in small ways. Outside, the evening had turned into night. and the stars were beginning to appear. Ryan helped Celeste back onto the Harley, and they rode through the city with no destination in mind, just following the road wherever it led. They ended up at Crescent Beach, the same beach where they'd met 12 years ago. Ryan parked the bike and they walked down to the sand, taking off their shoes and letting the cool night air wash over them. The beach was empty, just the two of them, and the sound of waves against the shore. "I used to come here every night for months after you gave me the medallion," Celeste said softly. "I kept hoping you'd be here again, that I'd find you sleeping under that ratty blanket and I could thank you properly. You never found me. No, you'd disappeared." She turned to look at him, and in the moonlight, her eyes were impossibly blue. "Where did you go?" "Marcus's shop was on the other side of town. I started sleeping there instead of the beach. It was warmer. Safer." Ryan picked up a smooth stone and turned it over in his hands. "I used to think about you too, though. About whether you were okay. Whether the medallion had helped you somehow. It did. More than you know." Celeste sat down in the sand and pulled Ryan down beside her. "Every time I felt alone, I'd touch it and remember that someone had cared enough to give me something precious. It became my anchor." They sat in silence for a while, listening to the waves and watching the stars emerge one by one. Ryan felt a peace settle over him that he hadn't felt in years, maybe ever. This moment with this woman on this beach where everything had started. "Ryan?" Celeste's voice was soft. "Yeah? Kiss me again, like you did yesterday. But this time don't stop because of work or duty or what people might think. Just kiss me because you want to." Ryan didn't need to be asked twice. He turned toward her, cupping her face in his rough, calloused hands, and kissed her with everything he had. All the loneliness of the past 12 years. All the hope he'd been afraid to feel. All the impossible possibility of this moment. Celeste kissed him back with equal intensity, her fingers tangling in his hair, pulling him closer. And for those few perfect seconds, there was no CEO and no janitor, no mansion and no studio apartment, no past and no future, just two people who had found each other against all odds, refusing to let go. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were crying. "I don't know how to do this," Ryan admitted. "I don't know how to be with someone like you. Then we'll figure it out together." Celeste wiped at her eyes. "No rules, no expectations. Just us, being honest with each other." "Honest?" Ryan nodded. "I can do honest." "Good. Then honestly, Ryan Walker, I think I'm falling for you. Fast and hard and completely." Ryan felt his heart skip a beat. "That's dangerous." "I know." She smiled through her tears. "But I've been playing it safe my whole life, and it's made me miserable. Maybe it's time to be dangerous." "Celeste, tell me you don't feel it too. Tell me I'm crazy and I'll walk away. I'll go back to my mansion and my loneliness and pretend yesterday never happened." Ryan knew he should tell her exactly that. He should protect her from the inevitable heartbreak, from the gossip and judgment and complications that would come from being together. He should be the responsible one, the cautious one, the one who thought about consequences. But when he looked at Celeste, at this woman who had kept his mother's medallion for 12 years, who had remembered a homeless boy from a beach, who saw him as more than just a janitor, he couldn't lie. "I feel it too," he said. "I'm falling for you too, and it terrifies me." "Good." She kissed him again, softer this time. "Let's be terrified together." They stayed on that beach until almost midnight, talking and laughing and kissing under the stars. And when Ryan finally took Celeste home, dropping her off at her iron gates and watching her walk up to her mansion, he knew that everything had changed. His phone buzzed as he was riding home. "See, thank you for tonight. For the ride, the dinner, the beach, for all of it. I haven't felt this happy in years." "Ryan, neither have I. Same time next week?" "See, how about tomorrow?" Ryan laughed out loud, the sound echoing in his helmet. "Ryan, tomorrow it is." He rode home through empty streets, his heart full and his mind quiet for the first time in as long as he could remember. Tomorrow he'd worry about the complications. Tomorrow he'd think about what people would say, about how difficult this would be, about all the obstacles standing between them. But tonight, he just let himself feel happy. And somewhere across town, in a massive white mansion, Celeste Davenport clutched a silver medallion and felt exactly the same way. The gossip started on a Tuesday. Ryan was cleaning the executive floor when he overheard two women near the elevator. "I'm telling you, Susan, I saw them at Giuseppe's last week. The CEO and that janitor, holding hands across the table." "You're joking. Celeste Davenport with the cleaning guy?" "I swear, and he picked her up on a motorcycle." Ryan's hands tightened on his mop handle. 3 weeks of secret dates and midnight phone calls, and now it was starting. The whispers, The judgment. His radio crackled. Walker, Ms. Davenport needs to see you in her office. Immediately. Inside, Celeste stood by the window in her royal blue blazer. Richard Blackwell called an emergency board meeting for tomorrow morning. Someone photographed us at the beach last week. Then we fight, Ryan said, crossing to her. You don't understand. She turned, exhaustion in her eyes. Richard owns 20% of the hotel. This could cost you your job. I could lose control of everything my father left me. You really believe that without the hotel you're nothing? What else do I have? Her voice cracked. A mother who drinks herself to sleep? A mansion full of empty rooms? This hotel is all I have left of my father. You have me. Celeste shook her head. For how long? Until you get tired of being judged every time we walk into a room? Stop. He cupped her face. Stop pushing me away because you're scared. I've rebuilt a motorcycle from scratch 3 times. I know how to stick with something when it matters. This is different. No, it's not. You're scared. I'm scared. But that doesn't mean we give up. Ryan pressed his forehead against hers. Tomorrow, remember who you are. Remember the girl on the beach brave enough to talk to a stranger. Remember the woman who asked a janitor for a kiss because she wanted something real. What if I'm not strong enough? Then I'll be strong enough for both of us. He kissed her gently. But I don't think you need me to be. You're stronger than you realize. They stood together. 2 people trying to survive a storm they hadn't seen coming. Outside, the city glittered with 1,000 lights. I should fire you, Celeste said finally. Make it a clean break. Or you could walk into that meeting tomorrow and tell him the truth, that you're in love with me. Celeste's breath caught. I never said, you didn't have to. I can see it every time you look at me. Ryan smiled. Just like you can see that I'm in love with you. This is insane, Celeste whispered. We've only been together 3 weeks. I know. Richard will use this against me. Then we beat him together. Ryan kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. I'm not going anywhere, Celeste Davenport. Not unless you tell me to go. Celeste laughed through her tears. You're impossible. I'm yours, Ryan corrected. If you want me, I want you. God help me. I want you more than I've wanted anything in my entire life. The next morning, Ryan showed up at the board meeting uninvited, standing at the back in his navy shirt and dark jeans, while 7 board members stared in varying degrees of shock. Richard Blackwell, silver-haired in an expensive suit, stood at the table's head. Ms. Davenport, what is the meaning of this intrusion? Celeste, resplendent in her blazer, looked only at Ryan. Her eyes held everything he needed to see. Courage, love, determination. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce Ryan Walker. He works in our maintenance department. He's also the man I'm in love with. The room erupted. Multiple board members spoke at once, their voices overlapping in confusion and outrage. Richard's voice cut through. This is exactly the poor judgment I referenced. You've allowed a personal relationship to compromise your professional standing. On the contrary, Celeste said calmly, my relationship with Ryan has made me a better CEO. He reminds me why this hotel matters. Not profit margins, but people. People who take pride in their jobs, who show up every day and do good work even when nobody's watching. She walked until she stood next to Richard. Ryan taught me that dignity isn't about titles or bank accounts. It's about how you treat people. And frankly, Richard, I've learned more about leadership from him in 3 weeks than I ever learned from you. Richard's face turned red. You're choosing a janitor over the future of this hotel? I'm choosing honesty over your politics. Celeste pulled out a folder. I've accepted a buyout offer from Meridian Hotels for your shares. 30% above market value. You have 48 hours. You can't force me to sell. Actually, I can. Section 12, paragraph 4. If a board member acts against the hotel's best interests, the CEO can facilitate their exit. Her smile was sharp. Sending anonymous photographs to manipulate corporate decisions qualifies. Richard's face went white as he read the documents. Anyone else have concerns about my personal life? Celeste asked the room. Silence. Good. Meeting adjourned. She walked to Ryan and took his hand in full view of everyone. Shall we? In the elevator, Celeste finally breathed. Did that really just happen? You were incredible. Ryan pulled her close. I was terrified the entire time. She laughed shakily. My hands were shaking so bad. You looked like a warrior queen up there. A warrior queen in love with a janitor. That'll be the headline. Let them write whatever they want. Ryan cupped her face. As long as the story ends with us together. Together, Celeste tested the word. For how long? How about forever? Ryan Walker, are you proposing to me in an elevator? Not yet. He grinned. But ask me again in 6 months. I'm warning you. It's coming. I'm going to marry you, Celeste Davenport. I'm going to spend the rest of my life proving you made the right choice when you asked me for that kiss. Celeste kissed him, long and deep. I already know I made the right choice. That night at Crescent Beach, Celeste leaned against Ryan's chest, the sound of waves washing over them like a benediction. I've been thinking about the hotel. I want to start a program for people like you were, homeless youth who need job training and a chance to rebuild their lives. Would you help me design it? Me? Who better than someone who's lived it? Her eyes were bright with excitement. We could offer apprenticeships in different departments, provide housing assistance, create pathways for people who just need someone to believe in them. Ryan felt his throat tighten. You want to do that? For strangers? They're not strangers. They're you, 12 years ago. And if someone had offered you something like that back then, she trailed off. Maybe I wouldn't have spent 2 years sleeping in shelters, Ryan finished quietly. Not different. Celeste kissed him softly. Because then you might not have ended up at the Melbrock, and I might never have found you again. Ryan wrapped his arms around her, breathing in jasmine and rain and possibility. I love you. I know it's fast and probably crazy, but I love you. I love you too. And it's not crazy. It's just us. They stayed until the stars came out. Two people who had started as strangers and become something more. Something real. Something worth fighting for. 6 months later, Ryan proposed on the same beach where they'd first met. Celeste said yes before he finished asking, tears streaming down her face as he slipped a simple silver ring onto her finger. Not expensive, but chosen with care, just like the medallion 12 years ago. A year after that, they married at the Melbrock Hotel, with the staff they'd helped rebuild standing as witnesses. Ryan wore a suit for the first time in his life. Celeste wore her royal blue blazer over her wedding dress, and when people asked why, she smiled. Because this blazer is part of my story, she said, and I'm done hiding any part of who I am. The apprenticeship program launched 3 months after the wedding. They called it the Second Chance Initiative. In its first year, it helped 23 young people find jobs, housing, and hope. Ryan read each application personally, seeing himself in every desperate plea for a chance. Ryan moved from maintenance to training coordinator for the program. He still rode his Harley to work every day, still fixed it with his own hands when it broke down, still found peace in the rhythm of the road. On quiet nights, they'd ride to Crescent Beach, and Celeste would touch the medallion she still wore beneath her blazer, its silver surface warm from her skin. Do you ever regret it? She'd ask. Giving this away to a stranger? Never, Ryan would answer, because that stranger became my whole world. Under the stars that had witnessed their beginning, they'd kiss and remember that the best love stories start with a dare to be vulnerable, a dare to be honest, a dare to believe that broken things can be fixed if you're patient enough, if you're brave enough, if you're willing to hold on when the world tells you to let go. Ryan Walker learned that lesson from a motorcycle and a medallion, and a woman who asked him for a kiss. And Celeste Davenport learned it from a janitor who taught her that dignity wasn't about what you owned. It was about who you loved, and who loved you back.